So we may have been deprived of football in recent weeks, but that hasn't stopped the Manchester United media machine from churning out an abundance of talking points. We are covering everything from Jim's comments to Marcus Rashford's future, Ahmad, Everton, and much more. It's your latest injection of the Theatre of Red. A weekend without Premier League football was made that little bit harder to stomach due to the lack of midweek cup participation, resulting in what is a shocking scenario where Manchester United have a 13-day gap between competitive fixtures. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, our white knight from Ineos decided to unleash the most hideous of comments in the middle of all of this, targeting the most vulnerable people, while completely forgetting about the foundations of the football club that he says he understands. All things considered, we are only 5 days out from a short trip to face Everton at the time of recording, and Michael Carrick's Reds are aiming to continue their forward march towards a potential return to Champions League football. There's also everything from the ongoing public discussions about Marcus Rashford and his potential move to Barcelona, Ahmad's role and his form in this team, as well as the long-term future of Carrick, dressing room culture, and whatever else should rear its head during the course of this conversation. Now, there's far too much stuff to tackle myself, so who better than to share time with my good mate, Reza Pedramnia. How is everything in your world, sir? You doing well?
All good, thank you, Shaun. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay. I know it has been a few days since Jim decided to open his mouth and remind the world that billionaires live on an entirely different planet from you and me. But given my temporary quiet period following the loss of a dear family member, I think it is only fitting that we visit this for a moment or two. As I published in an article on the Theatre of Red website midweek, I don't think I'm really in a position to discuss the political landscape of the UK, nor do I wish to do so. But given the impact that these comments have on a football club that supplies the basis of my 9 to 5 and much more, I think it's a necessary element, sir. This is a man who has spoken about his humble upbringing and what is supposed to be his understanding of the working class nature of Manchester, and those who sought to escape their grueling manual labour all those years ago while dreaming into reality the football institution that we know and love today. Now, his follow-up apology was expected, but I think it's fair to say it was nonsense because he certainly believes what he had said initially. You know, when I was looking at it further, Reza, I could only grimace and feel sorry for the United social team across Twitter when they had to tweet about the club's values and admiration for a global audience in the wake of what was such stupid public comments from a man who seems to forget his responsibilities for Manchester United and the position that he's in. Now, for obvious reasons, the word colonise arouses many emotions within me, and I'm sure any of the Irish listeners. It simply reeks of a man who is so removed from reality, it's further calling into question his suitability in the Northwest, having once more delivered a dart into the working class hearts of this global fan base. So I'll ask you, as best you can, Reza, how did his language, as he put it afterward in his apology, and the ease at which he delivered his initial statement land with you?
I hated it, to be honest with you, Shaun. I thought it was a horrendous choice of words, more so coming from the co-owner of the biggest club in the world that was established by the help of immigrants in a city that's thrived on the backs of workers who arrived from Ireland, Eastern Europe, Asia, and beyond. It was absolutely horrendous. And, it was these guys who, during the Industrial Revolution, helped grow the city from, pretty much a modest market town into one of the largest in Europe. And a significant number of people who established Newton Heath, the club that became Manchester United. They were Irish immigrants who had relocated to Manchester to find jobs in the railway industry. And the very club that Ratcliffe now co-owns wouldn't exist without them. So it's an absolute, shocking use of words. I mean, he wasn't talking about, Manchester United, and it was, I think, um, in some kind of like an economic forum or something like that he was talking about. But still, words matter, and when you're in that position, you really can be talking like this and causing, more division, in the community, especially after you've come out and, constantly talked about that, you're a local lad and you grew up in Manchester and you want to put Manchester back into Manchester United. And it shows that he is not connected to the city, and he's not actually connected to, what's happening amongst the fans.
Exactly. And yes, I know he wasn't discussing Manchester United. He was discussing an economy of a country that anyone listening can hear in my accent that, as I said, I don't have any right to comment on this, despite the fact that I have family members living and breathing and contributing to that particular economy. But he has responsibilities. As you said, he's the owner of the biggest football club potentially in the world. And how many inside in that dressing room are coming from different countries to play their trade? Now, I know people will argue that he's referencing individuals that are coming over and not contributing to society. And that's an entirely different conversation. One that, while I would like to really dive into, I don't think it has a place on this particular podcast. But it's just yet a further example of just how tone deaf this individual is. And really it completely typifies billionaires and the mega rich just living in an entirely different planet than we do. There's no real ramifications for actions like this. It's something that I think we could sit down now and we could discuss for anywhere up to an hour, but that's not what I want to do. I have no doubt that this will not be the last that we hear about Jim and his place at this football club. But for now, let us move on to speak about something a little more palatable, shall we? And Michael Carrick has obviously enjoyed a rather glorious spell as interim chief. He's masterminded an almost unthinkable return of 13 points from a possible 15 alongside the brilliant Steve Holland. Now, naturally, his appointment and his tactical principles, I think it's fair to say that they're a contrast to Ruben Amorim, who, for many reasons, both good and bad, saw his journey cut short in Manchester. This is a man that we have shared many conversations about, and we've written quite a lot of material about. But something that we've previously discussed is the toxic culture that has been growing within the football club for over 2 decades with the arrivals of the Glazers and an ever-growing list of unsuitable temperaments and personalities within that dressing room. Obviously, it's not going to be helped when Ratcliffe is coming out and having such ludicrous public statements. But you can say what you will about Amorim's time at the club. Everything that came and went with those poor results and the worst finish that we've seen in Premier League history. But he did target a revolution to alleviate what he viewed as a toxic presence and also strengthened the squad significantly with the purchase of players like Patrick Dorgu, Senna Lamens, Brian Mbeumo, Matheus Cunha, Benjamin Sesko. Although many have embraced what we see under Carrick, there are those who are still approaching cautiously as they feel that we're witnessing the mandatory new manager bounce. But all being said, when you have Lisandro Martinez speaking publicly about his admiration for Carrick and how he has touched his heart, it paints this impression of a renewed culture and a unified vision in moving forward. I do firmly believe that Amorim deserves his flowers for planting the seeds for this, despite what we witnessed with Kobbie Mainoo. But as a man yourself who has written in great detail about the stagnant culture, the mandatory necessity for change, where do you stand on what we see now mid-February at the football club?
Look, starting off with Carrick and the impact that he's had, his appointment has understandably generated a lot of excitement, and the results are evidence that there's genuine quality in the squad. And, when the players are properly motivated and organized and psychologically free from the weight of a difficult spell, that is the level that they can get at. But I am one of those guys who you mentioned, who are kind of going about it cautiously, because to me it's still very early days. We've had 5 great results, but you cannot measure the impact on a culture based on this. Now, I agree that Amorim did plant some of the seeds for it. But taking into account where we've been, where we're coming from the last 13 years, I think it's way too early to start getting excited about this. Now, the comparison I'm going to make is, and I think I've mentioned it on Twitter as well, I'm going to compare it to something Mourinho said, or mention something that Mourinho said when Solskjaer took over from him. And at the end of the season, he had turned things around. Jose came out and said, it really doesn't matter because the same problems that I faced are still at the club. And at the time, me and I'm sure plenty of others kind of laughed this off, and we put this on Jose being bitter old Jose because he literally tried to burn the club down as he was leaving. So we kind of laughed it off and didn't think too much about it. But then a couple of seasons later, we did notice, but we didn't understand what he was trying to say. And now Carrick is obviously, he's got it much better with Wilcox and Brado and Fibble, and you can't really compare, his surroundings with what Solskjaer had to work with, in terms of Woodward and Glazers and, other such glorified accountants in football roles. But still, I feel some of the same warnings, do apply here. The same players who looked, disjointed on the Amorim, they look sharp on the Carrick, but we have to ask what has changed. So what has changed? There is obviously a new coach, a new voice, and there's psychological relief of a reset. And these are real effects, but they are temporary by nature, right? They're temporary unless something deeper changes alongside them. And to me, that change has to be from the culture.
You're mentioning the psychological side of this, how there's psychological relief. But one thing jumps to my head. When Ruben was at the club, obviously we know he wore his heart in his sleeve. I think everybody can agree with that. He was very welcoming of any sort of a question and didn't really filter his responses, whether they pre or post-match press conferences. And one that stands out massively is when he came out and openly said, whether or not it was factually correct or not, that this was the worst team in Manchester United's history. So when the head coach, manager, if you will, is coming out and saying that publicly in front of the world's media, what sort of a psychological stance is that taking on the squad? Is that not something that we can also factor into this?
No, absolutely. It wouldn't have helped. I mean, at times like these, as fans, we can't help but keep looking back to the good old days. And that's just, I think, a natural thing to do. So how would Sir Alex deal with these kind of situations? Would he come out and throw the players under the bus, like that? No, he wouldn't. Because he'd built a culture that wouldn't allow any of that, to happen. And the question that I get asked a lot whenever I talk about culture, and I think written like 4 or 5 pieces in the past, actually more, probably like 6 or 7 pieces, and I'm talking about it like endlessly within the community on Facebook and occasionally on Twitter as well. And people ask me, what is the culture that you're talking about? And the clearest way for me to describe it is what a club does by default, not what it says it stands for, and not what's written or spoken at press conferences for sound bites like this club is massive and this and that, but what actually happens automatically when the pressure is on. So for me, culture is the invisible architecture underneath everything else. So you gotta I always refer back to to the Sir Alex times. This culture. So how did it start? How did it cultivate? Well, he started bringing in older players like Nobby Stiles, who was a club legend, and I'd written about him extensively in the past. And I think we'd had a little chat about him as well, Shaun, about the impact that this guy had at the club and the character that he was. And, he was basically a warrior on the pitch. Nice as offered, but an absolute beast on it. And Sir Alex brought this guy in, not for tactical reasons or anything like that, but for guys like Beckham, Neville and Giggs and Scholes, all these up-and-coming players, to learn from him, to understand what fighting for the badge ahead of your individual ambitions should be. And then, the results in here, like they speak for themselves. So what that resulted in was players trying their best not to lose. They didn't want to lose because, for them, it was part of the culture. It was not accepted to lose. You had players running harder in the 89th minute than the first minute. There was no panic, if we conceded the first goal, because we knew the team is going to raise itself, right? It was pretty much impossible to lose in injury time, and again, it had nothing to do with tactics and anything like that. But because we refused to allow it, and that was part of the culture.
Culture and belief obviously plays a huge part in that as well. You have to
and belief as well, yeah, because these become part of the non-negotiables, and every club with a genuinely healthy culture has one of these defining characteristics, and and that's a non-negotiable. Real Madrid, let's say, their culture is built on expectation that winning is everything. They don't accept anything less. Whoever walks into that club, they understand immediately that, hey, excuses don't cut it. You have to win in here. What's another example? Bayern Munich. What's their motto? It's Mia San Mia, which means we are who we are. And it's not a marketing slogan. It's a genuine statement of cultural identity. Ajax, what's their motto? Their motto is for the future. And everything is about that collective continuity. And that's exactly why whenever they lose world-class players, they just bring in another player and they continue as they are, because those players, the whole club, they understand that whoever comes in, that the culture is the number one thing. It's within their system, and they automatically start thriving again. And we have our own motto, obviously, youth, courage, success. But in the past 13 years, how much of that did the Glazers and Woodward adhere to?
Something that Phil Brown has alluded to previously. It's about a clear, defined route towards success. And that if you sat in front of those Glazers and asked them what they categorized as success, it's commercial success is what they're looking for. I mean, if they can get, if they can get it on the field, it's okay. But commercial success is the primary goal. For all of the faults we've just discussed, a pretty large one with Radcliffe. Can we yet establish what their vision of success is at the football club, Reza? As of now, it has been about putting personal funds, and it seems pretty apparent that there's a sporting department hell-bent on returning the club to sporting success. Is that a fair statement, without disregarding what we've already discussed, or is that yet too impossible to achieve?
Their intentions, I believe, are good, but they are hampered financially. It's not like they have a clean slate. It's not like there are no financial rules to abide by. And what's been happening, the motto pretty much at the club for the past 13 years has been make money. We wanted to achieve Champions League to get Champions League money, not to win the Champions League, right? That's how it's been at the club, and it takes time to change. This is what I was kind of saying with Carrick. I absolutely love it that we're doing so good, and nothing excites me more than one of our own being in charge of the club, and kind of giving us the vibe of the good old days, and everyone's kind of excited of having him back at the club, especially with the way he's playing and how players talk about with the way he's got us playing and the way the players talk about him. But we have all these other issues that have been going on for so long in the background that are not going to get sorted, within the next 6 months, or even the next year or so. It's going to be like a gradual change, and we have to stay patient with it. Now, again, looking back on how the relationship has been between, the Glazer culture and the players, it's been purely financial. It hasn't been about trophies. It's been about money. I mean, if you think back to one of the early signings that they made with Angel Di Maria, he openly said he came to United because of the huge salary that we offered. His first choice was PSG, and that's where he ended up going after one season. So he chose the club because of the money, and we saw how that went. Sanchez, he came in, he destroyed the wage structure, and it hampered us for a couple more years after that. Pogba, to this day, he's genuinely baffled that when his contract came to an end, we didn't give him a huge new contract, but instead let him leave for free. So the primary relationship between the club and the player has been financial rather than cultural for so long. So there isn't going to be major change unless this culture changes into a winning mentality geared towards trophies and honor instead of cash. Now, with Ineos, I do believe they do have the right intentions, and you have to look at what they've done. Let's start with the upgrade of the training facilities. They didn't reflect the ambitions of a club claiming to compete at the highest level. So they went ahead, they invested 50 million straight away, and they changed it top to bottom. And that is part of a daily life at the club. And by fixing that, you're immediately saying that we're going to raise the levels and we're aiming for a better culture. So that's the first thing that they did. The second thing that they did was changing their recruitment policy. And this season, we've started seeing the benefits of it. The recruiting is being geared more towards bringing in characters who will actually fight for the shirt, not for a paycheck. We've seen that with Mbumo. We've seen that with Cunha as well. Dorgu has been a fantastic signing. We've started identifying young talent early and managing them better as well. Again, we've seen that mostly this season. The guys we've brought in, like Lenny Yoro, Aiden Heaven, Dorgu, again, they've all been fantastic. And even Sesko, he's being managed properly this time around. Compare that to how it was with Rasmus Højlund. When we brought the guy in and we threw him into the deep end, put the pressure of the world on his shoulders, and he was expected to basically carry the team and score all the goals. And we saw how that turned out. It wasn't that he was a bad player. It was just at his age, he should have had a senior striker in front of him. And we didn't do that. And, he ended up, leaving, or we told him he's surplus to requirements. And now he's doing really well elsewhere. And I'm generally happy for him. But I'm glad to see that we are not doing that with Sesko. Now, since he came in, he's been kind of, he didn't start every single game straight away. Overall, I think Amrim did quite well by him, and Carrick is doing, even better. At his age, when we have people in the team right now who are actually scoring the goals and taking the pressure off him, he's in a far better position to learn and become the player that we're hoping he's going to be, and become the player that we've invested so much money in. So he's coming in and he's doing a fantastic job whenever he's called upon. Lenny Yoro, he started off, he had a good run of games. His form dropped. He went to the bench. He didn't cry and sulk or ask for, transfer or anything like that. The first opportunity that he gets back, he puts in a fantastic shift, and he had a major hand in getting us the draw and earning us the point against West Ham the other game. So he's been fantastic as well. Aiden Heaven, exactly the same. Now compare that to the time where we had, the likes of Garnacho, or even going back further, Rashford, when we were throwing these guys into the team and putting pressure on them, and and it wasn't working out. And we saw how two major talents kind of failed at the club. And you can't blame all of it on the club. There was some other issues as well. But ultimately, in a club that's got a settled, strong culture, these players, they should be still at the club, and they should be thriving with proper education if there was no pressure on them to deliver straight away. And I'm glad that that's kind of been fixed now as well. And there's other good things that Ineos have done as well. Obviously getting the stadium thing going as well. They have done a lot of good. They do have a good intentions, but it's a long road ahead.
It's a very long road ahead, and there's many things you've just stated. It's going to be difficult for me to key in on them all, but one of the fundamental things you said midway through was the salaries, the inflated salaries that were being provided to attract names for commercial benefit. And obviously the knock-on effect of that led to existing squad members wanting parity. You know, we saw this obviously with the man you just mentioned, in Marcus Rashford. He's one who became a significant departure under this new look strategy when we're talking about culture. When you think Rashford, obviously he's enjoyed a promising stint in Birmingham before earning his desired move to Spain. Now, despite not holding down a regular starting berth there, he has impressed with a strong output. He's loving life in a sunnier climate. Although we are told, and it's something that we reported several months ago, that a lack of La Liga goal-scoring output has been raised internally. Now, in the last few days, we've seen many large social accounts and the typical few in the tabloids coining information that we released many months ago at the Theatre of Red about Barca's desire to complete a permanent deal for less than the previously agreed fee, ultimately test Ineos's resolve. And that's another thing that will date back to this very, very poor continental reputation that we had under a sporting hierarchy, if you even want to call it that had no place in being so. As was the case in December, Reza, we revealed alongside Albert Fernandez that the club would attempt to engage for a package in the region of 20 to 25 million euros. And that remains the case today. But United are uninterested in taking a lower fee than was previously agreed. We're told that they remain confident of getting their desired amount, albeit lower than they could attract elsewhere now. The biggest issue here, outside of a breakdown in relations between player and club, is the salary. And that's what one of the main points that you've mentioned. The impact that has had in Manchester. As of now, Rashford wants to stay in Barcelona, and all parties are working to achieve this. That I can confirm. And there's also this narrative that Michael Carrick is pushing for his return. Now, as I did midweek, I can clarify now that is largely exaggerated. Obviously, he knows that Marcus is a superb player, and he wouldn't be against utilising him if a potential deal broke down. But he is absolutely pushing for nothing of the sort. That's what my sources tell me. Rather than diving further into culture, instead looking at individuals, on the topic of Rashford, as you just mentioned him, would you like to see one last dance from the local boy, who is indeed a United legend? Or does the club need to get a deal solidified in the summer to maintain progression towards the culture that we have discussed?
Absolutely. I think we need to move on. Rashford did have his chance. I do firmly believe that he was the right player at the wrong period at the club, as so were like a couple of others. The lad is happy abroad. He's doing fine. I think we should move on. There's no way we should settle for anything less than the agreement amount of 30 million. I mean, come on, look at the guy's output. It's if we were to sell him right now, we could demand perhaps another 15, maybe even 20 more than what we agreed with Barcelona. So naturally, Barcelona are going to try their best to get a little discount. I mean, who wouldn't? This is how these things are designed. They will try to get slightly better terms and so forth. But I think he's going to go. He wouldn't want to be at any other club right now. But overall, I think we should move on. It is a little bit sad because he is one of our own. I've said a lot and I've argued a lot about how he was treated, and obviously it takes two to tango in these matters, and he made a lot of mistakes as well. But overall, the environment wasn't right for him. If he were to be coming through the system right now, I think he'd be completely different. I think he'd be regarded as a major talent going forward, and we wouldn't want to lose him, just like how we don't want to lose Kobe Mainu right now. But it is what it is. It's in the past. We need to move on. I genuinely wish him all the best in Barcelona, and I'd hope that the next guys that are coming through the academy are going to have a better time than he did.
There's lots of individuals that I know on both sides. I've nothing but gratitude for what Rashford has done for Manchester United because, as you've clearly stated, he was there during a very difficult time. He saw so many coaches and so many players coming and going. And even though he was massively inconsistent, it's very easy to attribute that to the player when there's mitigating factors occurring outside of that. There's always so much conversation about individual players with their impact and the importance that they have for a Manchester United team. And Rashford, for so many seasons, was the epitome of this. And then, obviously, he was often targeted for reasons beyond football, ultimately adding to his desires to play outside of England. And nobody can begrudge him that. Now, I'm not saying that we're seeing the same with Ahmad's surface, but I'm noticing that there is a growing social contingent who are attempting to belittle his output because of his lack of goals.
Nonsense.
Especially since returning from the Africa Cup of Nations, because he's yet to obviously register a goal under Carrick. I wrote midweek, Reza, about his performances and just how vital he is in transitions and why he is a crucial cog in this team. I've also referenced how his time spent as a wing-back under Amram has benefited him tremendously, with everything from his presence up and down the touchline to his defensive actions and continuous place in the build-up phases, ultimately leading to all these numerous goal-scoring chances because of his work rate and his link play. I can't help but shudder when I read some of the nonsense that I'm seeing about Ahmad. Or maybe I'm deluded with my observations, who knows? But have you admired what you have seen, especially under Carrick, or are you craving more from our little maestro?
I'm over the moon with him. I mean, look, when was the last time we had a player who would actually carry the ball so well and run at defenders and scare the bejesus out of them? It's been a while. And he does that, and he's exciting every time he gets the ball, and the way he goes forward, and that's genuinely exciting to watch. Fine, yeah, the output hasn't been like amazing, but he's a major part of the team. A lot of things go through him. He's built a good relationship with Mbeumo as well. I think it's fantastic, and look, he's even carrying out his defensive duties. This is based on what I'm seeing. That you look at the stats and everything more than I do. But am I correct in this observation? He is doing very well, because every time I see him, he is actually tracking back and and trying to defend as well, and he does that fairly well, right?
Oh, he's sensational. Like I look, I'm a nerd when it comes to this stuff, as I love looking into the statistics. And yes, I mean, his output is what, 5 goal contributions in the Premier League. But people are not looking at everything before that. Like, he's ranking in the top 94, 95 percentile for key passes, and that's for a winger. And then you're looking at the defensive contributions. Like, he's constantly available. Even if you just look at his heat map for the season, it's just red. The entire touchline from back to front is just red because he never stops moving. That's why I'm saying I'm reading these comments, and I know social media is absurd and people say the most ridiculous things at the best of times, but I cannot fathom why anybody would choose to pick on Ahmad of all people.
Well, the team is doing generally is doing well. Everybody's kind of like performing. So naturally, there's got to be some kind of negativity for people to click on, right? So some come up with this kind of nonsense. I mean, look at it. We got someone like Bruno who scores goals, assists. He's a creative machine, and people can't stop moaning about him. Oh, but it's not all about goals and assists, and fine. And then you got someone like Ahmad, who may not be scoring or assisting as much, but is still a huge part of the team, and they'll have a moan about him too. So I personally don't care about any of this stuff. You look at the guy's output, you see how hard he works, and you see that he can be a creative force, and he's putting a lot of effort in defensively as well. There's absolutely nothing wrong. He's there. He's fighting for the team. What are you people complaining about?
Exactly. And, you mentioned Bruno. It always brings me back to Jonathan Wilson's Inverting the Pyramid. If you haven't read it, I would strongly recommend you do so. As geeky as that book is for a football fanatic about tactics and formations, what is the goal of a game of football, Rez, is to put the ball in the back of the net. And Bruno Fernandes either does it or puts it on a plate for people to do it. How many times in every single game? Make no mistake, though, although I don't select the starting 11, someday, God willing, I will. But there's a distinct possibility that Ahmad will play a significant role against Everton on Monday evening, sir, given that he has started 5 under Carrick and played all but 2 minutes. This game is going to offer an opportunity to atone for November's 1-0 defeat at Old Trafford under Ruben Amorim. And that was, I think, Everton's first in 8 fixtures between the sides at the time. It's always a good thing, I don't care what anybody says, to have an abundance of options available for selection in multiple positions, because that's going to naturally entice competition and improve individual performances. And I want to touch on this player because you brought him up and I don't want it to be skipped past. Benjamin Sesko is obviously going to be chomping at the bit for a starting place because he's got 4 goals in his previous 5 appearances, including those 2 invaluable strikes against Fulham and West Ham off the bench. Now, he's a player who has inherited the expected agendas that were vacated by Rasmus Højlund. This is something I wrote about in abundance. But the one thing that I see here with Sesko, his mental fortitude appears to aid in swatting all of that aside with ease. If you look at a football and you digest the game, you know that he offers much to an attacking line. His ability to act as an outlet provides an alternative dynamic for Carrick. That said, Bryan Mbeumo has scored or assisted in 4 of his previous 5 starts as our number 9. And there is the niggling concern about deviating from a tried and tested structure. Can you see any attacking changes been made ahead of a trip to the Hill Dickinson Stadium on Monday, sir?
No, I think you'll keep it pretty much the same.
You reckon?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change. It's more so because, we've had this long gap now as well, about a couple of weeks break. I think he's going to stick to the same team, let them build, even more of a momentum together going forward. I can see Sesko maybe coming on a little bit earlier to get a bit more game time if, we've managed to get the job done. He will get a few more minutes, absolutely. But I'd be inclined to keep it as it is, pretty much. I think he's doing very well as it is. There's absolutely no need to put him, under more pressure. The boy is coming on. He's making a difference. Keep it at that. It's a shame that we're not in any cup games because I think he would have started. He would have started the cup games definitely. But no, I think for his first season, considering that he already had to go through a manager change already, and I don't think he got much of a preseason either. I think he's done well enough. There shouldn't be any kind of spotlight on him. I think he's receiving a good amount of protection. And from what I've read about him, he's a level-headed guy as well, and he doesn't spend any time scrolling on social media, which is a huge plus.
Absolutely it is. And it all adds to what I'm saying about his mental fortitude. I will say, though, his place in an attacking line could prove to be an invaluable asset against a very physical Everton defence. And that is a side sitting 8th with only 1 defeat in their previous 6 league outings. Albeit, Reza, that was at home in their last fixture against Bournemouth. We know what to expect, I think, from both sides. But given the necessity to continue collecting points ahead of that charge for European football, and what was arguably the most underwhelming performance under Carrick's reign against a very similar style in West Ham, what are you expecting to see on Monday?
It's hard to say. You like to think we're gonna carry on from the Fulham game then compared to what happened in West Ham. West Ham we did all right. It wasn't anything amazing. I feel like we could have done a little bit more, but we kept at it. Keep going the same way, to be honest. Look at that. I'm not into the tactics and the formations and this and that. I'm all about the character and the psychology of things. And from that perspective, what I see is fantastic. Definitely the guys are putting in a shift. The heads are not dropping. I think just continue as we are. And to be honest, even towards the end of Amorim's reign, I felt like we were getting somewhere. It didn't seem like the players are necessarily down. The character was very much there, and they were fighting. And then we had AFCON, and we had the injury to Bruno and injury to delete, and kind of a lot of things happened in like a short period, and then the results kind of nosedived, and then the stuff that happened between Wilcox and Amorim, and then everything suddenly went overly negative, when actually what was happening on the pitch, dare I say it, that it wasn't actually as disastrous as it came across, but it was just that we had suddenly a lot of players missing through injury and other tournaments. So I think we've kind of just evolved slowly, and it's helped that we've had Maguire back, and obviously Bruno came back, and the other lads came back as well. I think we're progressing fairly well. I'm expecting a win. I think it'd be a decent win. What do you think?
I would share your optimism. I can only hope that the 2-week layoff is going to benefit the group. And ultimately, another win will go a long way towards building on the momentum for Carrick to maintain his standing at the football club, not just for now or the next few weeks, but also building a portfolio for the foreseeable future. I mean, that in itself would probably take an entire podcast to dissect. So I'm not going to enter into that now. And obviously, each is entitled to their own views. But I can't help but feel that we are witnessing something different at this moment at Old Trafford. I can't quite put my finger on whether it's something that's going to be a temporary burst or whether we're actually witnessing some form of metamorphosis. I'm not going to get too ahead of myself with it, because we've seen so many times in the past that you can be burnt very, very quickly. And, referencing what you said about Amorim, you'll often see it with coaches and with players that everything just aligns at the right time and you get good bursts. With Amorim, it just seemed to go the complete opposite way. Everything was just completely all over the place. And I don't think it's too absurd in what you're saying. Performances, they weren't fantastic. There was maybe far too much onus on not conceding as opposed to attacking and inviting pressure on. But then there was a lot of opportunities that were being squandered by players, and goals change games. And the one thing is, we're seeing a lot of goals right now under Carrick, and I welcome every single bit of it. My man, as always, it's been a pleasure. What is going on in your ever-busy working world and the amazing work that you're delivering at United Arts?
It's going well, thank you, mate. I'm about to launch a YouTube channel. So okay. I don't know if I'd mentioned it before, but it's going to be mostly based on kind of the threads that I'm writing at the moment on Twitter and on Facebook, where you talk about psychology and the culture of the club, and also delving into one of the main themes at the United Arts account, which is the club's history and some of the fantastic figures that we've had throughout it. So those are the kind of things I'm keen on making videos on, and not necessarily your average YouTube channel where people talk about the game that's just happened straight after the match, or talking about transfer rumors and so forth. None of that. There's plenty of people who are doing that, and they're doing a fantastic job. But I'm kind of looking at things from a different perspective, and I'm hoping that people are going to enjoy it. Aside from that, I'm trying to raise a little bit of money for the Manchester Munich Memorial Foundation. So I've put up 3 new portraits on the website utdarts.com, where every single penny of the profits made will go directly to that fantastic charity, which helps underprivileged kids and homeless people. And at the same time, they try to keep the memory of the Busby babes alive. So if you're listening to this and you want to do your bit, please feel free. utdarts.com, give it a click and check out the portraits that I've made. And if you like one, purchase it and help out those in need. Thank you.
Superb, man. Absolutely superb. And as I've said before, to anyone listening, the work that Reza delivers is second to none. I mean that. And it sits perfectly in any room, in any house. And you would be very foolish not to have a look. He said it a couple of times, but go check it out at utdarts.com. And you can thank me by subscribing wherever you're listening today. See what I did there? And maybe
Okay.
even leaving a little review to help bolster the content that we deliver. Like Reza saying about YouTube, I've been banging a drum lately about YouTube and my desire to build on this site. And we are seeing a huge growth in a very short time. So thank you so much for getting involved over there. It really does mean the world. And if you're not yet subscribed, it'll cost you nothing to do so. So go on, be a darling. And again, thank you all for your kind messages and your words following the passing of Frederick, an absolute champion of a man who will be sorely missed. I will be back next week to cover what we hope will be another 3 points against Everton and whatever else rears its head. So until then, enjoy the rest of your week and we will reconnect very soon. Take care.